Let's go. Let's go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hit Confirm. We're on episode 19, and I'm your host, Casey. One half of this combo, actually. Casey joined with my brother from another mother, Coach.
Oh, what up, Casey? What up, Casey? Oh man, what can I say, man?
How's it going, man? How's the week been rough for you, man?
Been a little bit rough. Yeah, I recently started a new job, so I'm getting to a little harsh point on that. So I'm just working through that and just other things. But man, we're gonna hit this show, forget all my worries, and it ain't a thing. How about you, man?
Yeah, things been going up, man. Like slowly. Like I said before, man. Like it's like Hansel and Gretel with the breadcrumbs, but instead of them finding it like that second, I'm finding it just one breadcrumb each day that goes by. So it's little, but it all adds up, man. So
That's what's up. I don't know what you're gonna do when you get to the witch's hut, but man,
oh, she's
I know you got a
she's
plan.
in for it. Yeah, she's in for it. She ain't gonna know what hit her. But today I want to get into a little topic about I've been meaning to get into this for quite some time,
All right.
and that's aggressive styles. Maybe we'll get into defensive styles probably like another time or another podcast. But for now, I want to go more in depth about aggressive styles, and because a lot of people have different interpretations of aggressive styles,
Yeah.
and I want to kind of like lay out those different perspectives. So first thing I do want to talk about with this is when it comes to aggressive styles, like what was the very first game that you played where you felt overwhelmed and you're like, man, like I don't know what to do?
Well, I guess since I've started competing in tournaments, it would honestly be Street Fighter 4, even though that was most people would say it was a defensive minded game, but
Right.
when you don't know better, somebody running
Oh,
at you is just like super dangerous. But if we put in the qualifier that I basically knew what was going on and knew what I was doing, uh I would probably say that would probably be Melty Blood, where I first like when I already got my hands dirty, my feet were wet, and I knew what fighting games were mostly about. That was the first game where it's like, oh man, what's going on? What's happening? How do I block that? How do I stop this? Do I just wait and all the stuff flying through my mind? So that I would say I would guess like given what I think you're going for, I would just say Melty Blood.
yeah. It had you looking around the room like and asking the person next to you, like, yeah, what's going on? Like, what's all this? It had you feel like a new player again.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times that's exactly what how it feels, man. It makes you feel like so like overwhelmed, and they're doing their job. And honestly, aggressive styles, um so I want to talk about why our players are aggressive, right? So one of the reasons why I know from uh personal experience is they're trying to hide something, you know.
Hmm.
Usually when players are aggressive, they're either trying to hide like that the fact that their execution might not be as good. But there's a second part to that too, so I'll touch on that right after. But most likely it's or it's their defense. It could be a multiple things, but it's mostly like the defensive aspect. When somebody's overly aggressive, it's because their defense is their weakest part. So they're going to try to get stronger in the aspect of offense, and that's that's understandable because like when players go into that, they decide to they're making a conscious decision and be like, okay, most of my training is going to be mostly offense based. So it's like, once you fight back, once you go through that chink of armor, funny enough, since we're talking about offense, but once you find that and like crack through, then they flip over like a turtle, the defensive player. I mean, the players that are super offensive. But what kind of like ticks me off that aggressive style players don't get the credit of is being good at what they're good at. Like usually it's we give excuses to those players of like, oh, he's either one to scrub or B what's the popular one? Damn, what's the real popular one where Unga, he's super Unga.
That phrase, the gorilla concept. Yeah.
Yeah, the gorilla concept. So we masked the fact that they're actually good at offense with those words, which in my opinion, just my opinion, I think that kind of hurts the player who's trying to do, I guess, who's trying to figure out that offensive player style a little bit more, because you're kind of like slightly like shrugging off the ultimate goal, which is just trying to figure out their offense in general,
Okay.
because a lot of aggressive players will end up probably having a pattern. Most players have a pattern.
Yeah, that's just kind of human nature.
Yep. So what are your thoughts about that? Like how do you, when you fight an aggressive player and you finally remember, like, try to remember the time where you finally figured out that aggressive player. What was the weakness that you found?
Um, that's a rough one, but I think I can answer it. It's usually it's usually that you find that there's gaps or places that are unsafe, but usually just kind of scared to put something in there because you get kind of drug into a chaotic situation when someone's trying to smother you. So it's usually like, yeah, once you have that intimate knowledge and the execution to exploit like gaps and punish windows and stuff like that, that tends to be where if the person doesn't have a well-rounded game, they'll kind of fall apart. Uh, that's
Yeah,
that is yeah.
that's perfect, because like so many people, so many people who are like aggressive style players, if you play them and then like you finally like decide to mash, you're like, oh, I'm gonna mash here because this does not look like it's, aggressive players are not perfect in every way, right? Everybody's not perfect when they're playing fighting games. So when
True.
you finally decide to mash and they get angry, or they, they're like, wait, what? They mash? And then it's like, yeah. It's like, I figured it out. I'm gonna mash here at least, because that there's gonna be gaps, like you said. You just got to be like, keep your cool and like pick your spots. And it's okay if you're uncomfortable picking a spot and you still go for one. I found in my experience, sometimes just going for something works.
Yeah, put it
So
out there. Let them know that you're not just gonna passively take it.
yep. But with that said, like aggressive styles, since they're so aggressive, they're gonna probably take quick note of that and go right back in there.
Yeah. So I guess I'll point out something when you're talking about aggressive play style, because I was listening to your explanations, your examples and stuff, and I realized that this is just one of those things that I don't know if I don't know if I'm rare in this, but I
Hmm.
think of this in different ways than you kind of do. So when somebody says aggression, I don't think offense or defense. I think that they're kind of actively making you make decisions as far like to me offense and defense are in a different realm from aggression and passiveness. I think the opposite of aggression isn't defense but being passive, as in you're letting your opponent make the decision. So that's typically how I look at that. So when someone says somebody's aggressive, I think they can be defensively aggressive or offensively aggressive or passively offensive or passively defensive, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So like like an aggressive defense would be like the old Street Fighter 2 Guile, where he's shoving you into the corner. He's not like mixing you up or pressing into you, but he's aggressively pressing into a space where you have to try to find a way out of the trap, and he's reacting to the actions he's forcing you to do, even though he's not really pressing the issue on you. He's forcing you to play a kind of passive offense where you're going based on his decisions. So he's being the aggressive one, but he's on defense. So that's kind of how I look at that. And it's like being passively defensive is like people who are just kind of sitting there waiting for the anti-air, waiting for the poke. So like they tend to be weak to people just running in. And if you go in like the offense, like like you got your yuns, your dive kickers and stuff like that. They're gonna keep pressing you like, hey, you better do something about this. You better do something. That's kind of basically what I think you were kind of alluding to. They're like the
Right.
people just kind of pressing you, trying to put you in blocks and trying to see if you do anything and if they can catch anything or whatever. And then you got people who kind of passively be offensive, where they might go in there for their string and then might wait for you to do something like I'm gonna bait the DP or I'm gonna do this, but they're still trying to maintain the offensive pressure. It's kind of a blurry distinction, but that's kind of how I look at that. Aggression being I'm the one making the primary decisions and the opponent's the one making the secondary decisions. And as far as passiveness, where I'm making the secondary decisions to my opponent's primary decisions. And then you can be offensive or defensive in that regard. So when most people say like aggression or, Unga stuff, they're talking about, the person who's overly aggressive making decisions, and they're the primary actor. And what that ends up being is, and what people usually refer to as Unga is like, they don't care what's negative on block. They don't care if this is good or not. They just
Yeah, they'll take their turn.
they're gonna put it on you regardless. It's their turn, your turn. They're not paying attention.
Exactly.
That's what most people are referring to. But to me, it's just more nuanced, like I was kind of describing earlier. So I think the primary, no matter what the game, no matter if it's strong defensively or strong offensively, I think aggression is always going to be the strongest play style. Like when you were the one making the primary decisions, that means you are more in control of what's going on, and the opponent is working with a smaller decision tree if they're working against you. So what I feel like you're trying to do, whether you're playing offense or defense, what you ultimately I think you're trying to do is, how do I become the primary actor? How do I dictate what goes on, where we're standing, what actions are good and bad. So like if my character's a strong mid range, how do I get there? And then once I'm in the mid range, my pokes, are strong, and then I can bait out the jumps, and then I can counter hit the pokes. And if I got some, conversions, I can do that. So, and if my opponent starts acting passive, and then I can press in, it's all like, the ebb and the flow, as they say, where
Right.
you want to be able to, I think you should always maintain aggression in the sense of being a primary actor, but you don't always want to be on offense. You don't always want to be on defense. You want to flow in and out of those, where when you see your opponent push back, you go into them, and when they try to push towards you, you might want to pull back. And there's always nuances like the game system, the way your character works, the way their character works, the damage and all that stuff. But that's typically how I view that.
That's really good, because what came up in my head when you were saying that, if this character never existed, I probably would have disagreed with you on what you were saying with the whole passive aggressive thing.
Mhm.
But Morgan, she's a perfect example of that, about being that, like, she's taking initiative and not really at the same time being, I guess, like the Yun style. She's not the Yun style. She's more on the Guile style.
Yeah,
But
you're playing to her. They're playing to her too.
playing to her, yeah. But there is that ebb and flow where it ends up becoming who's gonna. It basically is anticipate to initiate, if that makes any sense.
Hey man,
Anticipate what's gonna happen, so that way you can like initiate your turn or your strat or whatever, and that's when you start to dictate the match. So that's the ebb and flow thing that I understood that you were saying.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's pretty much it. Like you say, like you wanna make that right decisions, and then you wanna go. Now my opponent's decisions are worth less than mine. And
exactly.
once that's the case, you're the primary actor, and they gotta flip that on you. And again, like the nuance depends on the game, but generally in anything competitive, even outside of fighting games, I feel like that's kind of true.
Yep. Oh no, so it's funny that you say that, because card games, a lot of games get compared to like fighting games, right?
Hmm.
But card games usually don't get compared to fighting games for a lot of reasons. That's understandable. But I was thinking about like, how you were talking about like the ebb and flow and how I was saying initiating and stuff like that and putting stuff out there. What you're doing is you're putting frames, especially if you're initiating something, you're putting frames out there, you're putting numbers out there. So it's kind of like I'm laying my cards out. Do you have something to beat it? That's where I like, make the parallel uh, comparison to card games and fighting games. It's like, here's my hand. Do you have anything that can beat it? It's just much more fast paced.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was literally a card game from from David Serlin where it called Yomi, based, and a lot of that is based on his fantasy strike game. But that's the concept, and I think the kind of thing you're like hinting at is a thing that is hard to see in fighting games. The resource that's hard to see, time. And time is not just the the clock, ticking down. Is I put you at this amount of frames, and so now my decision tree is automatically stronger than yours, or now I'm negative, so your decision tree is now stronger than mine. So that time, it's a weird concept to think about, but having to be able to shift and move that time in your favor or when it's in your opponent's favor dictates a lot of, again, strength that your decisions have. Like being right when you're in negative frames doesn't have as much value as being right as when you're in positive frames, depending again on the game. But like the generally, like
Right.
I'm +4 in a game that has frame traps and stuff like that. Me, getting the counter hit and being right is gonna be, might be more valuable than like you hitting the DP and just knocking me off of you. You got your turn back and we're back at neutral. Again, game dependent, yada yada. But like if I get my counter hit and go into my big combo and then roll into my Oki, my being right essentially had more value than yours, and it might have been even less risky because you had to do that unsafe DP while I did this +4 on block normal into like a +1 normal, and I can just like back off and disengage.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the problem that I guess people run into, yeah, is like the timing because now they're starting to panic and they're it's funny that you mentioned timing because how many people actually look at the clock when they're blocking something in fighting games? And
It's not often.
I I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't look at the clock when I'm blocking something. I'm too busy concentrating on my opponent, what he's doing, the meter, how much meter. It's too much stuff to worry about. So I do understand when people when they're being fighting somebody who's quote unquote overly aggressive and they're not looking at the clock. But I can't remember who said this, but there was a player that was like, if I'm losing, as long as I have time on the screen, I still have a chance to win. It wasn't a Japanese player either. It was a top Street Fighter 4 player. I can't remember, but I remember when they said that, everything made sense to me. And then I remember like that next day going to a session and doing way better, and then I forgot about it and I did worse. But yeah, just trying to keep a track. That's another thing about aggressive styles and why characters like Morgan, for example, is a little bit more, I guess you would say, toxic compared to like a Guile, is because she's forcing you to make those decisions much quicker than a Guile. Guile is like you could chill, kind of cut back a little bit, and then if you pay attention to him, if all you do is just pay attention to him, not really the clock, but pay attention to him, you can like take your chances. But Morgan, she's like, well, you got to do something or you're gonna die because it's chip death and all that. And if you get hit, it's like really bad.
Yeah,
So
and even then, like if you can still compare both characters in the fact that they're eating up your time.
yep,
Like
yeah,
like
for
when
sure.
like when you down to like 7 seconds and they got a full life bar, and if your game does not have that kind of burst damage, what do you do?
Yeah,
So like
it's funny.
you got to earn it back from them.
It's funny how we're talking more Guile and Morgan than like a Leo or a Yun, because it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, like the passive aggressive style. Yeah, it can be just as scary.
Yeah. Like whether you want to go offense or defense within aggression or offense or defense and passiveness. But and then, again, it's my view that the aggression, whether you go defensive or offensive, is always going to be better because you're dictating things. It means it usually kind of comes down to the fact that you're operating off a better strategy than your opponent, and
Yeah.
they're responding to your strategy. And whenever you're responding to the strategy, it's not that you can't win. It's just that, again, your choices are limited. The effectiveness of your choices are limited. Like even when you're right, it's usually like you go back to even, or you just get a little bit, and then you have to start pushing back. And then like, okay, now I'm in control. Now my decisions are better. But that's you just you're basically earning opportunities. I feel like that's how kind of fighting games are. It's like
Yeah.
you're earning opportunities, and then you use those opportunities. And I feel like that's the stuff a lot of people forget or don't think about or don't even know. And they try to go like for the immediate reward. And it's like you don't get the reward. You get the opportunity to set up a situation where you now can earn the reward. That's what I think a lot of people trip up in a loss and they get frustrated by. Like the big example would be like when you teach somebody, like say somebody's running like BB tag, for example. Somebody's like running a string on you, right?
Hmm.
And then you're like, okay, and, and like I'm the person running the string, and I'm telling you, the person who I'm beating up, like how to play. I'm like, hey, when my assist comes in and I come in, that's when you do, push block me out. And you go, well, all I get if I push block you out is if we go back to neutral. Yeah, that's right. You don't get a reward. You get the chance to put yourself in a situation where you can get a reward, and that's what. Once you realize that, I feel like that's when the door opens. It's like, okay, so this if a character has like extreme rushdown, for example, right, and you realize that their lows are really dangerous, but the overheads are not, but you can't see the overheads. But then people get caught up on the fact, man, I can't see those overheads. Well, let's say the overheads, all they do is they do a little damage and knock you down, right? And put you in a situation. It's annoying, but then once you start looking at the rewards and like how they kind of scale up and how you have to earn situations, you're like, well, it's not the worst thing in the world to get hit by this overhead. Getting hit by the low is worse. So if I focus my decisions on letting myself be kind of okay with getting eat with the overhead and then, blocking the low and then taking my advantage and then gradually pushing, then I can put myself in a good situation. So you start to, how do I put this? You start to realize that not only is it okay to get hit, you start to realize it's how you want to get hit. And I feel like
Yep.
that's when you start to break past the intermediate when it's like, this is what I'm willing to get hit by. This is what I'm not willing to get hit by in a given situation. And then you start, navigating towards the less dangerous things, and then you force your opponent to like, well, if I want to win, I got to do this overhead 20 times, right? But then the overhead gets blocked once, and then you get punished, and then the opponent's in control. And so that becomes a less appealing strategy. And so when you start finding that out, you start going, okay, what isn't actually that dangerous? Like even if the character is really good, this is how I feel like this is how you dismantle like the really strong characters, where you go, which part of their really strong kit isn't really that dangerous, or at most is a slap on the wrist. Let me navigate my choices to where they have to use those, so I can gradually push out of that situation. Even if I don't get an immediate reward, I can earn the situation where I'm in control. You know?
And this is where different aggressive styles come in play, because you can have a character. Let's take Chip for example in Guilty Gear.
Okay.
You can have one Chip player who's most Chip players. I don't want to say most Chip players are aggressive, but since the character is fast, he seems aggressive. So when he's running his offense, you noticed, hey, if I get hit here, like you said, I'm going to take less damage. But then you have the players that can confirm off anything really well into really good setups. So now you're like, man, if I get hit here, not only am I going to be put in a messed up setup, I'm probably going to like get put in like it's just going to be rinse repeat. I can't really like get hit here. Even though I'm taking less damage, the setup after is scarier, and that's where things get like really like tricky, right? Because you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'll be alive, but he'll be in a way better position. And then this time he might notice catching on like, hey, he's taking the damage low. I can just keep going low. And that's where the mind games go into, and I don't want to go deep into that, but that's where like, the difference is of aggressive styles, like can come in, and that can be very frustrating for people. But I do like how you were talking about like kind of transitioning to like, because my next question to like after why are players aggressive, kind of like how to really stop it honestly, and stopping aggressive styles is honestly being sort of like take like you say it trying to take your turn, not just sitting there all the time. Because I'll tell you right now, if you're blocking somebody and they see that you're blocking a lot, no matter how good you are at blocking, they're like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna command grab you or test you, just test to see if you can, take a throw or something.
Yeah. Or they might just sit there and string you and then rebuy the pressure, string you, rebuy the pressure,
Mm.
or just
Yep.
wait and just like, it's like I'm in control here. As long as you're sitting here blocking this, I got the clock. Assuming they're not trying to get the lead.
Yep. So like, I would say from Street Fighter 4 was like one of the early games I played competitively. So on defense, I was really bad. So I was either getting hit or I was blocking too much. Um, so I would say the game that I would probably, for me, where I started to kind of catch on with like retaliating was probably Marvel 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say Marvel 3. And what's funny about that game and is how defense works in that game. It's a passive defense while blocking. You if you're blocking, you press two buttons and you get push block, right?
Right.
But some people like me, I rely too much on push blocking than mashing, which can hurt because now you're like I don't want to mash because like I'm scared to. And I'll never forget I was playing Darius one time and I asked him, "Yo, what am I doing wrong?" He's like, "You're not mashing enough." 'Cause people say mashing is such a it gets a bad rep, right? And I can see why it gets a bad rep. One of the reasons why is because if you mash and you're not confirming, you're essentially telling your opponent that you're not really paying attention to what's going on. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's why most people say mashing, or when you hear the word mashing, it's like it's bad. But then you have people out there that says mash, like that that's it's not really pertaining to that, where it's just like, okay, he's just mashing to get out. I understand that. It's not even worth like it's not even execution or anything like that. It's just yeah, he's just mashing to get out. They don't see it as a bad thing.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's just one of those. It's again one of those FTC terms that's just a blanket that covers a lot of nuanced things. So like,
Yeah.
there's a difference between me willing to press a button when you put out a gap and you clearly doing frame taps on me and I'm just smashing thrower punches because I don't care. Like I just want something to connect. I don't care. Even though you're doing very concentrated, deliberate frame traps to catch my button presses, right? That's what a lot of people like mean when they say mashing is like, is they're not really particularly looking for a gap or anything like that. They're just hitting the button and hoping it works. And then there's the other concept where it's like, there's gaps coming. Now you might still get frame trapped or they might delay the gap, they might stagger, and you realize those, that I guess spectrum of decisions that you can make. And you're like, I'm putting a button out there because I think it'll win here. It might not win. That's fine. And it's like you may not even be looking for anything particular. You just know that there's a place where you could put a button here. But like if I put you at like +5 and +6 in a game that's pretty straightforward, and you just mindlessly pressing the button, that's what a lot of people kind of think about. And there's a
Yeah.
situation where again there's that nuance. It's like, and the other kind of aspect is how strong is blocking in a game? Because some games like down backing beats, like 95% of what happens in the game, right?
Yep.
Or at the very least it protects you. And there's some games where blocking and pressing a button, like I keep bringing up this game a lot in here, but Virtua Fighter. In Virtua Fighter, blocking, moving, and pressing a button, they all kind of carry the same weight. One of them is not stronger than the other, typically. So like you can get punished for blocking too much just as much you can get punished for pressing buttons too much. And so like it doesn't provide you a safety net decision like in most 2D games. It's like I can down back, and you got to figure out how to beat down back. But once you can do that, then I got to make nuanced defense. But like if you're a player who doesn't have like the knowledge or the strong offensive game, beating down back is hard in most 2D games.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things.
And I guess when some people get clouded in their judgment and like get distracted on how like, man, the aggressive style of this character is too good and I don't know how to get out of it. Well, you do if you look at your character and you see their options and then see what the game's mechanics options have and then put your like, your mind to that, you do have options on defense to get out. There's always answers to like everything, and especially during these times of fighting games. It's not like back then where it's like you just caught them. If you're in an unblockable setup, you're in an unblockable setup. But
Yeah.
now it's like, all right, if he knows that I was blocking this, and he has these other options like command grab or this empty jump low or whatever. Well, let's see what options I have. And I don't think people think about that much. Just too much in the moment. They're like, man, it's too much going on. I can't think about it. And it's like, well, this is where I guess a little bit of a training mode and playing goes hand in hand.
Yeah. Gotta do
And
both.
yeah, like I remember I was talking to Dogi and I asked him what do you do when the game first comes out, and do you block more or do you press buttons more? If I remember correctly, I think he said he presses buttons more just to see. And I told him, hey, I'm a person who blocks more. Is there a right answer to that? No. But I asked him because I thought it was interesting because it's like one player starts off blocking, one player starts off mashing. Eventually, we're going to cross roads, and then we're going to start, mashing more, start blocking more, start implementing our character-specific defensive stuff, mechanic stuff more. So, like, it's interesting how we find, I guess because it's easier, we find that fun, right? But there are some defensive players, they're very rare, but like Moons in Marvel, if you ever ask him, he was like, I didn't mind like blocking. People be like, what? Didn't mind blocking in Marvel 3? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
This game you can't block in the game. But then you see why, because they're using all their options to get, and they're using their timing. He's timing his push block right. He's just using rotating his options as much as he can. So when you rotate your options, pretty much the game becomes like, it doesn't become a one player game, like as most people say with aggressive players. It doesn't become a one player game anymore. And that's when the game starts to become fun, that interaction, because now they're forced to like really call out your stuff. And if they call it out, cool. Like they called it out. If they didn't call it out, but like, they kind of went for something, that's cool too. Like it's at the end of the day, that's the play style. That's how you gotta like, deal with it. So
Yeah, I would agree. That's typically where the fun is. Was like, you see what they're doing, they see what you're doing, and then it's like, all right, well, I got to start mixing it up. I got to start hiding this card, all that good stuff. And so, that's the point that we all aspire to. And depending on the game, one side is harder to get on the other. Is like how to bring your defense up, how to bring your offense up. But overall, like going back to your original questions, like how do I beat aggressive playstyle? Beat a better aggressor. That's my answer.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good, because like I wanted to somehow like throw in like mirror matches, but mirror matches is a perfect example of this. Because you see a mirror match, and the first thing that comes to, I guess, the spectator mind is like, oh, this is going to be boring. But for like, there are some people out there that are like, ooh, they're getting their popcorn ready. They're like, a mirror match, no matter what match it is. You know why? It's because they want to see who's going to end up being the aggressor. So, and who's going to trump over the other, and who has that knowledge, right? That knowledge check actually of like the matchup and the character and everything, and the players. It's a player matchup thing too. It's a heavy player matchup in mirror matches. So yeah, even if it's Guile, it can be a pretty fun Guile mirror match,
Yeah, It's again, like you said, it's do I know this my own character's matchup? Because some people don't. But like, if you play a common character, like you play Ryu, Gran, Narukami or whatever, you're probably gonna know the matchup for your character because you're gonna run into, like, assuming you play often in various people, like you
Yep.
play the main character, or whoever, you're gonna know the ins and outs of that matchup just by encountering it enough.
Yep. And also wanted to like mention that because I see like a lot of newer games these days compared to older games. There you have defensive tools that you can also use on offense if you want to, like blitz, um, reflect. And they're starting to go more of that route, and I think it's because they don't want to just see a player. You know, they don't want to see that one player game. You're starting to see that in most fighting games these days, right? And it's people are starting like to deal like to accept it slowly, very slowly, right? So it's now it's getting to that meta for where it's like where it's getting closer where they're kind of help guiding you to be like that aggressive, kind of like how you were saying, like when I asked you or how you answered that question, how to stop aggressive players. It's kind of like the developers are kind of slowly guiding you to be that aggressor because of the mechanics that they're implementing.
I can see
So
that.
like,
'Cause I know that's the big thing. Is like people's like, man, why isn't zoning that strong and stuff like that? And I don't think it's that zoning isn't strong. I think you just can't disengage yourself defensively. Like, you
yeah,
still have to be like I mentioned earlier. You still have to be, even if you choose absolute defense, it has to come from a place of aggression where you're dictating what's happening. And a lot of people don't like that, I think. And there is the aspect where just in general they're fast characters, but I don't even feel like it's a newer fighting game thing. I feel like, the person who's able to overwhelm the other character and force them on the back foot has always been better. It's always been
yeah.
strong in games outside of some weird exceptions like, Arcade Aquaposit, where there's a character called Rhiannon who can literally sit in a corner and just like spray the screen full of crap. But again, that's still aggression, right?
Yeah.
Because there's still stuff on the screen that you have to address before you get to her. So it's still aggression. It's not just passive. In a way, it kind of was because she just like backdash to the corner.
Yeah,
but
she's not
that's
really trying to interact with you.
yeah, yeah. But again, you're still the secondary decision maker there. That's my point. And I
Right.
feel like if the aggressor is the primary decision maker, and if you have a solid game plan, like the system mechanics, the characters, how what you want out of your pressure. Do I want to stop the throws, the jump, the mash button, or whatever? And then that's when you start to shine that's what I mean by being the better aggressor. And when you're the better aggressor, you know what to look for on defense. You know how to see people's patterns stuff easily because you know how to open people up, and you know what's frustrating to open up when you're good at opening people up. And so you start to become better overall. So I think the even if you like play a character like Axel or whatever, you still need to be no. How do I put myself in a position where they're making decisions based off what I'm doing rather than the other way around? And
Yep.
so when you play like zoners, if you're too passive in a game where zoners are not strong, quote unquote, then yeah, that's what's typically going to happen is you're like, I'm occupying this space based on something you're already doing rather than preemptively. But again, it varies from game to game.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't play DBFZ as much as I used to.
Hmm.
With that, I've been much more methodical in my play, and I kind of more like a little bit more that passive aggressive style.
Hmm.
And it's funny that you mentioned zoning not being that strong because Fat Boo he doesn't have the best zoning in the game, but he can zone. With with that said, in DBFZ you don't want to zone forever. But the thing about him is he's very nimble for a fat character, for a big character. He's very nimble.
Okay.
So and he has pretty again like I said earlier, throwing the frames out there, like what can you do when I lay these cards out? So it's like when he throws a key blast, you think, oh, I can super dash it, like he's not gonna recover. I'm gonna hit him. It's like, nope, I recover. I'm blocking. You know, and it's not committing too much in neutral at that point. And so yeah, that's that. Yeah, I think we hit all the like good stuff on like the aggressive styles. Um, Oh, I also want to talk about something recently that happened with DBFC 2.
Go ahead, man.
The patch recent season.
Oh man. So kind of an
Yeah,
aside here. All right.
yeah. It when they first announced it, they made it seem like it's gonna be nothing but just like I guess assists getting buffed or whatever like that.
Mhm.
But some characters got buffed, characters that needed to get buffed. So there are some winners and losers though.
Give us the rundown, man.
So the biggest winners you have like Blue Vegeta, Blue Vegeta for people who don't play DBFZ that much or Dragon Ball. He had problems with him, his zoning problems. Funny enough, um, he he had a glitch. So in Dragon Ball, he if you throw a Ki Blast, you can cancel into like your next special move, whatever. If it makes contact, with the opponent, you can like whiff cancel it, the Ki Blast basically. But if he couldn't do that, he was the only character that couldn't like So if he did Ki Blast, he couldn't really 2H you on reaction.
Mm.
So they now he still can't really 2H. They didn't fix that, but they made it so he can actually special cancel if if the Ki Blast hits and stuff. So he can cancel as soon as the Ki Blast hits, and he could just pretty much whiff cancel it, honestly. And that's pretty good. And he's gotten a few like new routes and combos, and his damage was already high, so that's good. He's a winner. Um, what was another big winner that everybody was flocking over? Jiren, pretty good. His one of his counters got buffed to the point where you can't even Dragon Rush him. That's so if you Dragon Rush his counter, his 214S,
Mhm.
where the one where he sticks his hands out,
Yeah,
you'll get countered if you try to Dragon Rush him. And he got a few buffs too. Oh, some character, the nurse. I don't know if people seen it on Twitter, but because Kami, no Kami, shout out to my brother No Kami. That guy is really cool. Really like his streams. Really like his YouTube, man. Keep at it. He that Bardock B. Even people who didn't play DBFZ knew what Bardock B was.
yeah.
So he kept advertising Bardock B, and I guess they heard over there and at the DBFZ headquarters, and they was like, "Oh, Bardock B is tracking and it's doing all this, is keeping all these plus frames on this character. All right, cool. We're gonna nerf that." So it doesn't really track, but it like goes forward. They made all the assists that kind of like started off behind you. They made them go slightly forward now. So
So they're more
um
risky to use. Is that the point of that?
no, well for Bardock he's a little bit more risky because he just his was just teleport wherever you were on the screen as long as you were not like as long as you were on the ground he would like just be right in your face
Okay.
anywhere. Now it's say for instance Blueku, his dive kick, instead of him being like right next to you, it's kind of like a little bit more forward. So it's pretty much almost full screen since he dives forward. So that's pretty good for him, honestly.
Ah.
Yeah. So if you're doing a combo, another thing about DOZ that doesn't get mentioned, if you're doing a combo and your character like with outside the combo, you call the character and they're like far away, that's just their initial spot. But if you're doing it within the combo, they will just be close to you, and that's pretty much just a thing that's with DBFZ in general. I don't know if not all assists do that though. It's just like to keep the game like I guess that make it easier for people to do combos. Um, who else? Who else got buffed? Gotenks got combo buffed. 16. That's the big one. The big guy, 16. He was weak for the longest. I've always said he needed meter, just better meter, because in season 2 season 3 started off earlier. They buffed him to all he needed was just a good meter gain. He would have been fine. But now they gave him some really, really scary ass tools. Now he's much more scarier because I never used to be afraid of him when he's like in my face. I'm like, oh, you're a command grab character. If you grab me, I'm not that scared. Now he his 214S oh no 214 H his EX command grab, the one where he lunges forward and grabs you real quick.
Yeah.
That's a 6-frame low now. This explosion on the ground. And it's easier to combo off of. His 236 H, the one where he dashes forward and grabs you, goes through beams and key blasts.
Oh wow.
So yeah, that's he needed that though, because his 5H when it got nerfed from season 1, it and having only like one hit of armor, it was hard for him to get in. But the biggest kicker that he got was his assist, his B assist. So I don't know if you ever seen his B assist where he shoots his arms. You know.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the actual special move where he does it. I haven't seen the new assistant DBFC since I haven't played it in a while.
Yeah, so it's pretty much that he comes out. So in beginning of this season 3, you call B assist with him and he'll come out, shoot, aha, 1-2, right? And that's cool. That's really good. It kind of goes like full screen almost and everything. Now he comes out, ha ha, then jumps, ha ha, and it's like, wait, what? Or I think he starts off jumping and then he then lands on the ground and shoots. But regardless, he shoots like 4 of those things, and you're like, what? What? And then it has a gap, so like command grabs are viable. So it's scary. It feels like a Marvel mix-up now when you're blocking that. So because now it's like, even though that you can reflect, it's still pretty scary because then there's that gap, and he's shooting 2 more, and it goes pretty much full screen. So that was like one of the biggest buffs a character got. What's another big list? Fidel got buffed. Her reflect got a slight buff. Then her damage got better. So that's 2 things she kind of like really needed. But the biggest losers, because I don't want to go through every character in the patch. But we're gonna talk about the people that the characters that people been QQing over. That's Goku Black. Someone said the reason why Goku Black didn't get buffed is because the Goku Black players never really complained. They just kept playing him. And I was like, that is kind of true. Like especially if you're talking about the loyalists, they're like, they're not really complaining. They're out here saying, I'm the best Goku Black player ever. It's like, you do your thing, man. So yeah, Goku Black didn't get buffed. Frieza's 2H is still bad. And they added the old man Roshi, who has not a super dash, but his super dash button is a leap, and if you press it again, it's a directional input Kamehameha blast, where he'll Kamehameha blast forward towards you, and the whole Kamehameha blast is an actual hitbox. So if you do it the opposite way, he's doing an air Kamehameha blast, but he goes forward towards you, and the cons of it is it's directional, right? It doesn't track you. So hell yay, he can't be crazy DBFZ stuff. It's like, yeah, hold your horses. When you do block his Kamehameha super dash, he's plus like sparking. So you know how like in sparking when they do a super dash, they're like, they press a button and they're like falling with it.
Yeah.
They're not getting bounced off. Yeah, that's what he has. He can press he pretty much falls with it because he's super plus, and it's really good. People haven't really mastered it yet because the character's new. His combos are ridiculous though. He has water wall combos. He has the only character in the game that has a full screen air unblockable.
Yeah, I heard that's like kind of his, I guess, compensation for not having some of the main system mechanics, right?
Yep.
He can just like hit you out of the air, which I think he's the only one who can do that, right? Outside of like grabs.
Yep. Outside of grabs, he's the only one that can grab you in the air like that, and he's the only character, since he can't like really fly. He's the only character that doesn't have a float, so he can't float and he can't fast fall down. But to compensate for that, he has different angles of his leap. He has 4, 1, 2, 3, and 6 on the D-pad. Is it 4? I think it's 1, 2, 3, I think, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure. The character just came out, but he leaps in different heights and jumps very, very high. And he also had to take place of the fast fall. He has a 2S, which he does. I don't know if you ever seen it. He does like a backflip. And he falls down really quickly.
Hmm.
So I was testing him out, other than just combos, situations where like you wanna command grab, like say for instance you're playing a command grab character and your opponent's playing a command grab and you're playing Roshi, and sometimes one way to deal with a command grab is to super dash, right? Because you're in the air and it's like, cool, I can get a punish or whatever, right? Unless you're Brawly, then he just doesn't care. But but what makes him unique is, I don't know what frames it is, but if that meta where usually if people know that you're going to super dash, they can like 2H you, right?
Right.
But his leap is so fast, if you're not on point with like 2Hing, like during the block string, he'll just leap right out. In fact, there's a video of him leaping right out of all of Beerus's orb setups, like most of them. He just leaps out on knockdown. He just, you're setting up a orb?
Wow. Okay.
I'm gonna just jump out. And it's like, Beerus was like, but I'm a god. And Roshi's like, but I'm a human. So it's like, yeah, so I'm Roshi. So yeah, the game mechanics, super dash is still there for people who don't play DBFZ. That hasn't changed. That haven't got buffed or nerfed. But a lot of characters did get buffed. And in a game where like it's not like Marvel, where it's like only a couple characters, like the top 5, top 6 echelon. It was starting to get there though. Everybody was starting to play Brawly at one point. But now every character feels, I saw a tweet saying it feels like every character is at least A tier. And I believe that.
Okay.
Because Gogeta finally got his frame buffs. He's not like, he's not super bad on his frames anymore. So yeah, every character seems really, really scary right now. Even Videl, her damage is, she has full screen loops. I mean, water wall loops. So the game is looking like in a very, very, very great place right now. And I don't want them to touch it from here on out. Honestly, I just want them to add the last few characters. Please add stages. Arxis or Namco Bandai, if you're listening, please add stages. We need some new stages.
That's
Hyperbolic time chamber. So yeah.
Well, I guess we'll see how it goes down once the next set of tournaments start playing out. If there any like meta defines or character defining meta comes out or something.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, want to mention one more thing. Ginyu. He now has an assist. So I don't know if you were familiar with his B assist, but I think this is going to get down the line. You're going to see this later. But his B assist was basically him calling his just the regular S button of his Ginyu Force, which was like Godo throwing the tree spike, Raccoon doing the knee and little small stuff. But now he rotates through the whole Ginyu Force. So not just doing spike. Godo comes out, he does the freeze. Raccoon does the beam. That's like plus 1 billion. You confirm off it anywhere on screen. So yeah, the Ginyu they decided to buff Ginyu again. And I was watching Goichi playing Ginyu before that patch, and he was building 4 plus bar of meter in one combo and killing people left and right. So yeah, Ginyu is buffed, and not a lot of people talk about that character. So yeah, but it's pretty fun times for that game, and I can't wait to see more for that.
All right, man. I'm glad to hear it. And I hope you are able to get even more enjoyment, because I know that's just the game that you just been on and you were just so happy to get. So I'm glad that you feel it's in a really good place.
Yeah, for the first time, I'm actually playing just one team. I'm not like messing around with different teams, soul searching anymore. I'm legit just playing one team, and I've been doing pretty well. I played actually Jazzrat. Last time I played him was I was at 4-4, and we played like a short set. He destroyed me, and he destroyed me again online. But he's really good. Like a lot of people don't know how good like Jazzrat and the Georgia players are. Like they will destroy a lot of players international or here in America. So only got one game off of him. He is so good. But yeah, man, I'm happy that where DBFZ is at, and hope to see more. And they also have like a I want to say it's not like really a tour, but they have like their own little thing going on. So if you guys check out their Twitter, it's all over that. So
That's what's
yeah.
up. Well, I mean, anything to say in conclusion?
Happy that I'm alive to do another episode of this. Also, if you guys have more questions about aggressive play styles, you want to hit me up personally on Twitter, I can help you out with that. Because I've been playing against aggressive players for the longest. Vinny is one of my best friends, and his aggressive play style is very potent. He's a very scientific player, so even if you do have a good defense, he's gonna figure it out, some kind of way. So I really do know how to deal with really good aggressive play styles. So I can help you out there. So that's about it.
Word. Well, all I gotta say is kind of similar. Glad that we're still around to do this. And if you guys ever got any feedback, any suggestions, stuff you want us to talk about, feel free to hit us up on Twitter, and all the socials are usually in the description. So hit us up about anything. Want to be a guest? Let us know what you want to talk about, and we'll see about you. But other
Yeah.
than that, I ain't got anything else to say. So
You guys take care.
that's
Stay
right.
safe out there.
Peace out.